Oh, yeah, baby. It's that time. 10/11 is the date. My buddy David Serpa joining us today. What's up, my brother?
It's good to see you, brother.
Same to you. Fade this rock music out here. This standard stock music from StreamYard, by the way. So no royalties here, but there's a lot going on in the market. And I think it's good for us to get together. We're both heavily opinionated individuals about the market. We both work on the ground level in the market. And so we see things with our own eyes. We touch things with our own hands. But we tend to disagree. So I think it's good for us to have these chats and just kind of let people listen in, because otherwise we would have this over a coffee and just be between you and me. And I think this is
which
more
I
fun.
was wanting to do. I was like, hey man, just you and me, let's hang out. And you're like, hey, unless it is being streamed to 4 different places, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, then I don't really want to hang out with you, Serpa.
Oh gosh. Well, it's just like we can't deny the people, we've got to give it to them. So I've got mortgage rates up here just to start. Just looking at the reality of mortgage rates. And by the way, these are average rates that are published directly from rate sheets. Mortgage News Daily does a great job, pulling these in. I would say these look relatively good. My rates are a little bit lower, especially on the conventional and the FHA VA side. But, a quarter point to 3/8 of a point, not a ton, but our rates are lower than these. But just gives you a little idea of like what the trend is, what's going on, what are people staring down the barrel of. And we're seeing things happen. Things are changing in the marketplace, quite a bit, where buyers are getting a lot of things right now. Concessions for credits, 2-1 buy down options, lower prices, they're offering under list and being considered and talked to. We even had a situation.
The sellers
today.
are having to keep up with the new builds.
Is that what's going on?
That's big time in my area. There's so much new home construction, and there's so much sitting inventory. I don't know if you saw the video that I just released here last week, but we have a lot of sitting inventory. We have a lot of new homes. We have a lot of homes in default, and a lot of inventory hitting the market. Not to mention, of course, assembly build, 2011, SB6, SB9. So the outlook in the foreseeable future for inventory in the state of California is good. It's going to keep coming, I think.
Well, I look at those bills and I look at the government saying, hey, go ahead and just build houses. We don't really care anymore. You can turn that cardboard box in your front yard into a house and make it a unit, put an AC on there. And I understand the need for units. I really do. But it still doesn't change how complicated it is to build, how costly it is to build, and the regulations involved with that. So I don't know how much impact it'll have. I have noticed though, buyers, when I say your area, so I'm like San Diego County area, more Riverside County area. We blend a lot there on the border, but I have noticed buyers are looking up there, have more options. When they're going to look at the list of homes, here's the homes that fit your criteria. There's like 12 or 15.
Well, also you've got people out that still are looking for, the short-term rentals because of the fact that, I'm in an unincorporated area. But the impact for like SB9, for example, they want 2.5 million homes, but they said that realistically about 700,000 homes will be built because of SB9. But then when you combine that with these 40 other pieces of legislation that were introduced, I think that the impact could be huge. And if we know that we're 2.5 to 3 million homes behind, any inventory, and a lot of inventory is going to be good inventory. I understand that the narrative from a lot of your beach cities, which is a lot of your homies, is I don't want a bunch of shanties being built in a backyard, and I want to be able to keep my $3 million home and my neighbor's home to be $3 million. And with inventory being introduced, prices naturally come down. And when the government gets out of the way, which is what a lot of this is, it gives opportunities to not just developers, right? But then to, mom and pop landlords who are trying to stay in California, because of a lot of the regulations with SB9 specifically is you have to live in the property for 3 years. It can't be used for short-term rentals. It has to be occupied for 30 days or more. So the measure of the impact is going to be hard to do because like every program in California, like every law, end homelessness in 10 years, and then homelessness is worse than ever. You don't know, but the thing is not trying anything hasn't worked for us.
Yeah, that's true. Something needs to be done. There's no question about it. Homelessness will always be here, no matter what anyone tells you. There's a lot of people who choose to live that way. They want to live that way. You're not going to, take them away from that. If you've talked to anyone who's homeless on the streets, a lot of people who are there, they believe they deserve it for some reason. So like you have to fix that first, and that's a whole nother conversation. But
we should have that at some point or another, because overwhelmingly the numbers would say otherwise, that people do want help. It's just a lot of times they don't want it in the way that it's being offered.
that's true.
And so, of course, we've got mental illness and we've got all these different things, but I certainly think that we could make a huge impact in at least not creating new homelessness. I graduated from high school homeless. There are a lot of people that are sleeping on couches. There's a lot of people that, somebody brought up in my local chat group that there's now a tent in one of the local parks. And I'm nervous that
I just lost your audio. I'm not sure if that is on my end or your end, but I am not hearing your audio right now. So keep giving me tests there. Play around with it, I guess. So what he was talking about, I'll let you know when I can hear you. So far, I'm not hearing you.
Oh, it's my wife just pulled up, and the Bluetooth connected to the outside car.
Happens to me all the time. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, and you're right. That is definitely a conversation, maybe for another day. But it's the reality is you're going to, when you look at the housing crisis, there are multiple travesties. There's people who have nowhere to live, that live on the street because they have no other options. There's also people who work really hard. There's couples that work really hard, families who work really hard and can't afford to buy a home. And now they're at a point where they really can't afford to rent. Like imagine being, a 2-income household and you've got 2 or 3 kids. You're still in a 2-bedroom condo because it's the only thing you can afford rent wise, right? And that's all you can afford rent wise. And then you're looking at, okay, well, what if we want to buy something? What if we want to buy a house? Oh, okay, well, we can't afford that. Well, what if we want to rent a house? Okay, we can't afford that. So there's multiple travesties inside of a housing crisis, and it's caused a lot of people to leave the state. A lot of things like that going on with higher interest rates. Now what we're seeing in the market is prices are coming down. Sellers are having to chase buyers. In fact, today we have one where the listing agent, and I think it's a good hustle work by the listing agent, by the way, bravo to them. We're reaching out to everyone who came to see their open houses over the time that it's been open and saying, hey, we're still for sale. Here's the deal. Here's where we're at. Let us know if we still have interest in the property. We haven't seen stuff like that for quite some time. That's the kind of market that you're in, where the sellers are going. I mean, imagine if you're buying a car in a car lot, you start to walk off. What do they always do? They go, hey, wait. don't leave. What would it take for you to drive off in a car today? And so we're starting to see some of that. And that's a buyer's market scenario. Like when you go to a car dealer, it is 99.9% of the time a buyer's market scenario. Now we're kind of that way with housing in a lot of instances, which is presenting opportunities for people to be able to negotiate, get lower prices. Unfortunately, it's not that they're necessarily saving a lot because interest rates are higher and it's sort of offsetting their savings, but they are getting lower prices. They are getting closing costs. They are getting rate buy downs paid for by the seller. So there is some positive things like that happening for buyers, but it's still too rich for a lot of people's blood who have been waiting for prices to come down. They go, oh, prices are down. Okay, let me check. How does it look? Can you re-up my pre-approval? Yes, I can. We pre-approved you last when rates were at 4.25. Now they're at 6.25. So your pre-approval purchasing power has gone down. The prices and the payments on the homes that you're looking at are about the same or higher than when you were looking at before. And so that's where we're the rubber is meeting the road, and where some buyers are becoming extra deflated. And that's probably the greatest risk to the market overall, is that if rates continue to rise, you'll continue to have that sort of sentiment amongst buyers that, listen, I can't win. I can't win when prices are high and rates are low. I can't win when prices are low and rates are high. Are you back?
So a lot of what we're seeing right now is we're seeing that monthly sticker price shock. And we're also seeing our sellers realizing, like, not only are we not getting enough showings, we might not get any showings if we're overpriced, because people are, and we have live inventory right now, and it really, the top of the market was 3 or 4 months ago. And I tell people, we missed the top of the market. So if we're comping ourselves to what is sold inventory 3 or 4 months ago, unfortunately, that we're in a situation where that is not necessarily a good comp anymore, because your average buyer has lost so much in buying power. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to get creative. And because if somebody buys new, of course, the small print is, hey, we'll get you in your rate for, just under 5% or whatnot. But what they don't tell you is that you got to work with their lender, and that it's going to cost you this much, and the tax rate's going to be that much. So you end up in a situation where people are they're looking new, but they're also looking at resale, and they're like, well, wait a second, how can I get my rate down with resale? And so you're starting to see more and more listing agents offer that just in the notes. And it's a great thing to remind people of. But for those of us OGs in the game, we know about rate buy downs, and we know that that's something that you can do and that you can ask for. And often you could come in under, and you could come in and ask for a rate buy down. So, and for those of you that don't know what a rate buy down is, yeah, rates are at 6.5%. And I constantly hear you talk about, hey, my rates are a little bit lower. And I could tell you, I watch your YouTube channel, but I also work with you, and my clients work with you. And I've been very happy. They've been very happy with you. I've worked with a lot of lenders, and your rates are lower. And you, again and again, you say, hey, they're getting ready to raise interest rates, but rates are getting ready to come down. And I'm watching, and I'm shaking my head, sitting there watching your YouTube video. This guy's crazy. It's not going to happen again. And it happens again. So at the end of the day, I'm always willing to be wrong when I'm able to become informed. And what ends up happening is it makes me a better agent tuning into your YouTube channel. It makes it better so that I can more properly represent my clients and ultimately save them money over the course of their loan by addressing the number one issue that people have right now, which is in affordability. And a big part of that affordability is in that rate.
Yeah, no question about it. And in fact, we've been talking about this, with rates higher, everyone sort of assumes that, that rates will go down in the next couple of years. I'm one of those people. Just from a macroeconomic standpoint, the government can't afford to, be issuing debt that's this expensive for very long. And so the gravity is pulling rates down for sure from a macro standpoint. Wall Street wants lower rates. I mean, everybody wants it. Everybody who has power wants it. So we can kind of assume that at some point rates will go. We don't really know when, but I would say, my best guess is in the next couple of years, maybe 3 years tops. That'd be a long time for rates to be this high. In reality, probably in the next year. But in the meantime, how do you take advantage of a market if you're a buyer? This is the buy down calculator I've been offering everybody, including lenders out there. Listen, I don't keep these things secrets. If you're a lender and you want this, email me, I'll give it to you. But basically what you do here is you put in the information for your loan, the rate that you qualify for, and it automatically calculates the buy down schedule. So if you're at 6.25, let's say on your VA loan today, your year one is going to be at 4.25, saves you this much money per month. Your year two is going to be at 5.25, saves you this much money per month. And that is all paid for by the seller. So that seller would have to cough up that 24 grand. So could you, negotiate 24,000 off the purchase price? You could. Homes are appraising. So a lot of people are already getting homes under what they're appraised for, and still able to get these things negotiated. So it's kind of have your cake and eat it too.
Agreed. And that's actually one of the things that I was getting ready to bring up, because, up here in Riverside County, prices are significantly lower than that. They're closer to, 650,000 or 600,000. Right. And so that rate buy down, that's a significant amount of money that you would save every month by buying down the rate. But, we talk about marrying the house and dating the rate. Well, geez, what if you can marry the house and marry the rate? What if you can just become a polygamist? What if you could get a great rate by buying it down and have a great house? And I think that right now buyers are in a position to where they could be choosy. They haven't had this much negotiating power in years. And you're finally in a situation where they're sitting back and they're like, wait. I actually want to make sure that if I'm getting a house, that I'm going to be able to move in, it's going to be turnkey. Or that if I'm getting a house, it has that pool that I want or that lot that I want. And if they're not going to see it, they're just not going to put in the offer.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you have a unique scenario where there really are, less buyers out there who are hunting for homes. I mean, there are just less house hunters out there. The enthusiasm on the buy side has dwindled a little bit, which is really where the opportunity comes in. Now, could prices go lower from here? They most certainly could. Could rates go higher? They most certainly could. Could the opposite happen? Absolutely. All possibilities are on the table here. One of the things that's been happening, David, I'm sure you've been watching, is the dollar here has just been relentlessly going higher, and every deep pullback has just been opportunity on that front, with this crazy rising channel for the dollar, which is deflationary. This is showing that the dollar is gaining purchase power, which is pretty wild when you think about it. Dollar is up 17% since January 1st. So your purchasing power worldwide for your dollars is increased by 17% since January 1st, which is,
that's a huge part of it, is the affordability worldwide for the dollar, everybody that transacts in the dollar. And ultimately, when you inflict a recession in America, you inflict depressions on the world level. A lot of these emerging markets end up being crushed because they are trying to transact in the dollar. They're importing. And so ultimately, it does benefit a certain class. But it also really affects things like Bitcoin. It really affects things like I said, emerging markets, other markets that are still transacting in the dollar. And so it will be very interesting to see the way that this is used and continuously manipulated on a world level, and what the implications end up being here locally.
Yeah, this is really the sign of this is as you see the dollar, go higher, is that, okay, well, I should be trading my dollars for something that's priced in dollars if I believe the dollar is at a peak. We don't know that because there's still cuts. And if you look at this chart here, these red arrows are where the Fed has raised rates. So, there's a very common theme there, and it makes sense why the dollar would strengthen amongst the tightening or the raising of the interest rates that has been going on. So there's no reason to believe yet that we've seen the peak of that, which means there's no reason to believe yet that we've seen the bottom in, the S&P or the NASDAQ or the Dow.
A lot of this is political, right? So like at the end of the day, you look at the dollar and you look at these numbers and you look at inflation, and, of course, there are repercussions to bringing rates down to near zero. And, there are repercussions to printing the way that we printed. And so, but nobody wants to be stuck with the legacy of being the one who destroyed the economy. And at the end of the day, I don't think that things, I'm one of those people, I don't think it's going to get better in the foreseeable future. I think things are going to get worse. And the reason for that is right now, I think that there's a lot of numbers, like the unemployment number, for example, that is being manipulated, and we're not quite seeing the real numbers quite where I would expect them to be. And I think that we're going to see that hammer drop after the election. And I think that we're going to see more of this in the spring. But what do you think? You think that this job market is going to stay strong, or you think that we're going to see more of these white collar layoffs that are going to make it so that people have to put their house on the market?
And that's what we haven't really seen, right? Right now, the effects on the real estate market have been totally based on
interest rates.
Chart here. It's totally been because of what has happened with mortgage bonds. And I marked this up for a client earlier. I always do videos for everybody to understand what's going on when they're getting locked in. We got someone in contract today. Hallelujah. So this situation, that we're seeing right now, this weakness in the bond market, is really the problem. And of course, this is an inflationary problem. So we were just showing you a super deflationary situation in the dollar. So something's wrong. Somebody's wrong. Now, what I do think here, let's do a live question here from Kathy. Really worry about foreclosures if rates don't go down within 3 years, and even so, if they don't go down enough.
I agree.
So the problem so far has really just been interest rates. Interest rates are the reason the market has softened. The Fed tightening in coordination with the bond market failure is what's caused other things, the other implications. The Dow Jones now below 30,000, S&P down, NASDAQ down, Bitcoin's down. All of that is like Fed related, dollar related, specifically mortgage rates and the lack of, and by the way, this is where the Fed has really, really screwed up. And I will answer your question, Kathy, I promise.
I would like to too.
Okay, good. The Fed has really screwed up here because the Fed doesn't realize the power is not just in policy, it's in posture. So if they wanted to defend the bond market, they don't have to just do it with dollars. They don't, in other words, policy. They don't have to say, okay, we're going to allocate this much money to buy bonds. All they would have to do is say, okay, if interest rates go too high too fast, we'll reconsider our position on bonds. That's all I have to say. And that would call the dogs off. That would get Goldman Sachs out of there. Goldman Sachs reported a record quarter in Q2. They said it was their bond desk that made all the money. Well, bonds got murdered in Q2. So guess what? Goldman Sachs was murdering, just shorting, relentlessly shorting bonds, including mortgage bonds, making your mortgage rates go higher, profiting wildly from it. So, but it's because the bonds were unprotected for a long time. The Fed has been there buying. And so it made no sense to short those bonds. You would just ride the Fed wave. You long them, just like the Fed is. Once the Fed says, okay, we're not buying anymore and we're not going to buy anymore, those bonds are now unprotected and they were being attacked. So they could, if they just said the right thing, they don't have to do anything. Just say, we'll reconsider our position on that if things get too bad. That would call the dogs off. They haven't done that. So the bond market has been relentlessly murdered, just over and over and over and over and over. It happened again today. 55 basis points lost again today, even though we were like flat at one point today, lost 55 basis points. And it's just going to continue to happen over and over until they at least take the proper posture. Here it is. Yeah, 55 basis points. So, that's the real problem. Now, if rates don't go down within 3 years, if we still have a high rate environment in 3 years, we'll have other significant macro problems, that will be unrelated to real estate, that will be much more big picture issues. But it would cause, what will happen is it will cause prices to slowly go down. And that's what we're seeing here. You don't really get a crash when you have an interest rate pullback. You get sort of the slow decline. Now, interest rates have gone up so much, so fast that it almost feels like a bit of a crash. And that's the real danger, in my opinion, David. But I want to hear your thoughts on this too.
A huge part of this is the real inflation that people are feeling on the ground level. And when you talk about, drilling for oil in order to bring gas prices down, but then you're still exporting all of your oil, that doesn't work. You talk about bringing grocery costs down, but then now people that are farming are now selling off their breeding stock because they can't afford to continue farming. And so the thing is, all of the real costs are going up. Here in my area, and probably in some places down in San Diego County, the cost of fire insurance has gone up massively. When home prices go up, the cost of housing insurance, the cost to replace your home in the event that your home burns down, goes up. And so all of these different things are going up along with the cost of housing. And it's making it very difficult for people to keep up. And what Kathy taps on here she says, I really worry about foreclosures if rates don't go down within 3 years. I'll tell you what, people have been using their homes as ATMs, as, a lot of people taking out HELOCs because they saw that prices were going up. A lot of people were in lockdown situations and they were like, I want to get the most out of my house. And so they touched the equity in their home in prices. And then, now their monthly payment is going up. And I meet with people regularly who are either wanting to leave the state of California or who are wanting to sell their home. And I'm expecting to see massive equity in their home because of how long that they've lived there. But unfortunately, they've continuously touched their equity. And I tell people continuously, nobody gets rich by selling real estate. People get rich by buying and holding real estate. But when you look at these games that get played to recycle wealth, if you are not educated, you lose. And so this video that I released last week, I tapped onto this. There are 331 homes in a state of pre-foreclosure, which of course we know doesn't exist, using the Zillow tool. And I teach you how to use that to find these in your area. But there were over 30 homes that were actively listed that were foreclosures. And so that's something that even 3 or 4 months ago, we weren't seeing any foreclosures on the market. And now you're seeing people in a serious state of default. And we know that the Zillow pre-foreclosure thing is bogus because these aren't people who have agreed to list their home. But what it is an indication of is you have 30 homes that are actively listed as foreclosures. And then you have another 331 homes in that pipeline towards a state of default. And so if rates continue to go up, that means prices go down, which means that people have even less equity in their home and even more people are underwater. And you have people that are rushing to list their home because they may have lost their job, financial situation, they don't want to pay off their debt. And unfortunately, I agree with you, Kathy. And everything that Jerome Powell has indicated is that rates will continue to go up through 2024. And so, like you said, a lot of it is posturing. He's not saying, hey, listen, if things get really good and we'll sell off these mortgage bonds, things will be really fantastic. The economy's going, then we'll ease off. But they're giving just like no indication whatsoever that things are going to get better in the foreseeable future, which is why you see so much cash entering the market.
Yeah. And if I don't think that the big concern about foreclosures has to do with rates ultimately. I think ultimately it has to do with the economy. And that's what we saw here. There was, let me see this and pull this up. So Jeremy Siegel is very good. He said the biggest threat isn't inflation, which is what the Fed is so concerned about. The biggest threat is a severe recession. It's, the overall economy, failing because the Fed is on the wrong side of it once again. During the boom, the Fed was pumping stimulus and adding fuel to the fire significantly. And now that things have slowed down, now they're on the other side. So they're always behind because they're academics. They look at past data. They're never in front. They're never projecting. And so we're never going to, I think, they're never going to have things just perfectly harmonized like it's supposed to be. It's always going to be a whipsaw this way, that way. And there's people who also profit from that. We don't know if it's by design, but it sure does seem like it. And so, and I agree with this. It's the recession now is the problem, because that's really what the core of this question is. If, this goes on long enough and it causes problems with these big companies who have to do layoffs because now the dollar's so strong and 70% of their business is worldwide and not in the US, and they're getting crushed, their stock price is down, it's a ripple effect. It comes down to it. And so if it goes on long enough, the ripple will come all the way down to the point of layoffs, issues with that. And that's where you start to have economic problems. And that's where you could start to have foreclosure, because that's exacerbation of the situation where it's like, okay, well, now it's not just because our home is down in value. Now we also, one of our income earners has lost their job or has had to take another job where they make less. And that's where we get into a real bad situation.
I agree.
That's my personal concern, is really not as much about interest rates, but where the Fed is headed with interest rates is sending us down a bad path. We're on the wrong road.
Then when we go down towards that recession path, people lose their homes, people lose their jobs, people kill themselves. I mean, like when Jerome Powell mentions inflicting pain, we will be inflicting pain into the job market. I mean, like, that is real. That means that people are going to lose their homes. And I think at the end of the day, the answer to housing, quite honestly, is more housing. It's building more. And then you have more jobs. You have more people building. You've got more people working in escrow, more people selling homes, and more people lending. And at the end of the day, we need that right now. And so that's why I do think that there's a lot of good things that are happening in the state of California. And I do think that that's politically motivated. I think Governor Newsom wants to be President Newsom. I know that he thinks that homelessness and housing is going to be a big black stain on his record, that if he doesn't address it, that's going to sink his ship. And right now, yes, it's 2022. Yes, we're coming up on midterms, but there are a lot of people eyeing the presidency right now, and from both sides of the aisle, specifically President Trump and Governor Newsom. And I think that that we will benefit from the policy that he's trying to fast track.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I hope they would, remove the red tape, because that's really the problem. If you want to build, in California, is the red tape's crazy. I mean, I've talked to guys who build and have for a long time, And, they will just be like, look, it's completely nuts. If I wanted to explain it to you, we're going to need a half a day, or I tell you all the stuff we have to do. There's crazy madness, how expensive it is, and at the end of the day, when people build homes, they build them and then price them based on what profit they want to make. I mean, that's where the price comes from. It's crazy. It's fugazi. If you sit there and you guys sit down with these guys and have, dinner, and they explain to you how it works and how they come up with prices. It's literally, okay, well, it costs us this much, so we add this much to it. That's the price. So, when you look at those things, if they can fast track that, if they can minimize that stuff, then that would make a huge impact, not just on the number of homes we have, which helps the pricing, but also the cost of those homes. So I really do hope they're going in the right direction with that.
So right now we work with a number of, investors that are looking for opportunities. And this is going to be a great thing to be able to pitch to them and show them, hey, listen, take a look at, Assembly Bill 2011 and take a look at SB6, because in those two bills are huge opportunities for converting formerly commercial units into housing. And I'm really excited about it because it has that opportunity for not just the low to entry level, investors, but the larger investors. And so we have a team. Christian, my partner, Christian Tikas, is working with a big developer on a project in the city that, I'll leave it up to him. But they're literally diving into these two bills with a team of lawyers, because I was asking him, I said, hey, I want some feedback. I'm trying to get my hands on the entire bill so I could read everything and understand it, because I know that there's opportunity in there for these massive investors. But I also know that with a lot of those opportunities for massive investors will come a lot of really great opportunities for entry-level investors. Because one of these is about having a single family home, subdividing the lot 3 times, having 2 duplexes, and then now you're cash positive, or turning a single family residence into a fourplex. And so there's so many opportunities for people to enter into that landlord space, having people paying off their housing, which will create stability and opportunity for so many people. But the majority of that opportunity is always going to be at the top.
It's a true story. I know a guy down in the area where I like to look at real estate in Southwest Missouri, and he's building these houses. He's building legit houses, bro, that are they're 3-bedroom, 2-bath, kind of 1 room. They're very small, very cheaply built, but he's building them for like $50,000.
That's awesome.
And he rents them out for $600. And he's got over 1,000 of them now. 1,000 of them. And it's like, hey, this is what people want. They want a cheap house to rent. So that's what I'm doing. I'm building a cheap house for them to rent, and I'm just building a massive portfolio, and I'm building as many as I can possibly build.
It's unfortunate that we're no longer building the starter home. We are either building affordable housing, which is, the stacked housing, rentals, or we are building 3,000 square foot homes on 10,000 square foot lots. And I think that there has to be that middle ground of that 12 to 1,400 square foot, 3-bedroom home where people can have an introductory level to having housing that is affordable, because people will drive. They'll drive for a new suburb. But at the end of the day, we're not building that kind of housing because the profit motive isn't there.
That's the thing. Exactly. It all boils down to that at the end of the day. What can you make money on? That's why you're not seeing detached homes in San Diego County really being built hardly at all. Everything is townhomes and condos, and that's the only thing that pencils. You need big numbers to make it all work out. You don't really see people like in the old days where someone would go, oh, I'll buy that, 30 acres over there and we'll build, 30 houses on acre lots. You don't have that really happening. There's not enough land. We've gotten to that point where you're just not having that, not in the city, not in, the main areas that people want to be. Go
Correct.
to Springs and buy it probably, but just not in the places where people want to be. They've already been developed.
Well, America's shifting right now. We had this sort of like flight into suburbia where everybody owned a car and a house. And now there's sort of 2 different mindsets. There's the mindset of, I want to be close to the city centers. I want to be close to amenities and public housing or public transit and, sort of the sprawl, the jobs, the economy, the excitement. And then there are people that are willing to drive 20 minutes, 25, 30 minutes to have a little bit more of land, a little bit more house for their money. And so I think that we should be addressing both. And so Will that mean that there's massive development in the city centers because of, AB 2011 and SB 6? Yes, absolutely. But what that will also mean is that there's going to be opportunities in suburbia, in those areas that, don't necessarily have the city laws that are holding them back, don't necessarily have the county laws or the HOA or the CCNR, because less than 5% of homes will qualify for SB 9. So there's just not a lot of homes that will qualify. But those that do, I mean, I've got 5 kids, my brother. At the end of the day, I would love to have a couple of homes on one lot that's not out in the middle of nowhere. I'd rather have it be, on 2.5 acres where we've got three or four homes and my grandkids are around. I don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere building a Waco, Texas, where I'm stockpiling guns and hoping that the government doesn't come for me, because I want to have my family all on one piece of land.
Oh, I'm going to clip that out, that part right there.
SB 9, explained.
Oh man. But at the end of the day, like I always try to draw this back to source. What is the source of the problem? What is the solution? Kathy Wood is desperate at the moment, so we have to take this with a grain of salt. Her funds are very aggressively invested. So what the Fed is doing right now is crushing her and the people who have put money behind her. And so she's saying, hey, listen, we're risking economic loss, but she's actually correct. So I want to take it with a grain of salt. We know where the position she's in, but she's actually right. It is all Fed created. It's not just Fed related. It's Fed created. So is there a solution other than the Fed taking action? When the Fed creates a problem, in other words, can anyone else fix it? It's like saying, like, if you created a problem, could your kids fix it? Like they create problems, you can fix it. But if you create a problem, can they fix it? It really boils down to the Fed. At the end of the day, what we're saying here is we really need the Federal Reserve to do the right things, or we're going the wrong direction right here, right now. We're going the wrong direction. We're going in a direction of significant deflation, and the dollar shows us what's going on. This chart doesn't lie. It's significant deflation, which means what? That means that's what, when we say significant deflation, another way to say it is crash, right? That's another way to say a significant deflation. When you see prices come down significantly on things, that's also called a crash. Well, the DXY is showing us that, although we haven't really experienced it too much yet. We still have, stock indices down 20, 25, 30% from their all-time highs. Mm-hmm. But there could be a lot more downside in those situations if the Fed doesn't take other actions. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean action. Like I said earlier, they could just posture. They could just say, hey, we're considering a lot of things right now based on the state of the economy. They could literally just say that. We're considering a lot of different options that we have right now based on how things are going. If they just said that, so they would call the dogs off.
So there's a couple of different, schools of thought, right? One is pull off the Band-Aid. Hey, listen, if you're going to freaking do something crazy, if you're going to raise rates, just pull off the Band-Aid. But next thing you know, you've got a bunch of people underwater. Housing interest is stopped, entirely. And so I get the incremental raises. And then to play devil's advocate, of course, and this is something that I don't know, is like, hey, listen, housing prices have just gone like this. And this is another thing I talked about in my video. Because they just go like this, but then from 2020 to 2022, they went like this. They're like straight up. And so I saw very quickly people being priced out of markets where they worked. You know what I mean? People in situations where they've been renting for years, and the only reason why they're able to continue to afford to live here is because they're renting and their landlord hasn't caught on yet, or maybe their landlord did catch on. And so the problem is we're siphoning communities of wealth, and during times of recession, this only gets worse. You see a further monopolization. You see more people working for a Walmart, where that money goes and moves, out to Kansas. And then, that half of that money goes to China because that's where they're building all of the product. And so the thing is you have to have people living, working, creating, manufacturing in sustainable economies where we are growing the food that we're eating here, where we're building houses here, because there's a lot of different issues when it comes to housing that are all around inflation. And if we don't address all of them, it's like, having your left leg blown off. And I'm sorry that I'm a combat veteran, but your left leg's blown off and your right arm is blown off. So you're like, what I need a blood transfusion, or I really need to just worry about my right leg and my left leg will grow back. And, and so it feels like insanity. And do I know what is the right way to do we build our way out of it? No, not necessarily, because we do have to. And I throw this right back to you, brother. You got a big old brain in between your ears. How do you responsibly respond to the fact that we've printed all of this money for PPP loans? We print all this money for war. We print all this money and we just hand it to the corporate welfare state. And it has driven up the cost of everything for everyone, right? How do you bring the cost of housing down without shooting yourself in the foot and causing a recession?
Yeah, it's a very, very difficult thing to do because we don't have enough houses. That's the problem. And I talked to a siding guy, that's the number one problem. I talked to a siding guy, you should know this, who said these words very clearly to me. He said, make sure you tell everyone not to buy a house that was built in 2020 or 2021. Now, a siding guy, or like, someone who does like exterior, basically they're putting the lipstick on your house, right? Mm-hmm. And those are people who can see what's been built underneath. And what he's telling me is you would not believe the bubble gum and duct tape that's been used to put houses together the last couple of years. He's like, whatever you do not buy a house that was built in 2020 or 2021, pass it on. And I'm like, man, I gotta believe a guy like that.
I was talking to a developer yesterday because I'm selling his house out here, and he's, anyway, he's bought a big parcel up in northern Idaho, and he's off the grid at this point. But he's like, I'm a developer. I've been developing for years, and he goes, I'll tell you, we couldn't build them fast enough in 2020 and 2021. We couldn't build them fast enough. We were throwing them up there. And so the thing is, I tell people, hey, listen, if you're going to buy new, I'm not going to walk you down there to the lot. My wife, she does that kind of thing. She's nicer than I am. It's a car lot. I won't even walk you down the lot because I don't believe in it. But I'll tell you what, read all of the small print and get a home inspection, because these are the same people that weren't calling you back 3 or 4 months ago. They were making you camp out in front of the house. You know what I mean? And now, the value might be in new homes in 6 months or a year from now when they've completely lost their ASS. But I'd tell you what, even then, I'd get a very serious home inspection before I would consider buying one of these homes, because they were just print. I mean, they're even doing it right now. You drive around French Valley, and it is incredible the amount of housing that's being built right now.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. They can't move very quickly, right? So a lot of that stuff has been in the works for some time. And so they have no choice at that point, to go ahead and put the stuff up and just try to cut corners, exactly, to try to meet the pricing reality that they're going to be facing on the other side of it. So, yeah, I'm very skeptical of new construction. I have been for a long time. I've got a lot of issues I could air out with you, but I think the ultimate answer to your question is like, well, how do you get house prices to be, something that's realistic? Listen, I'm not against the idea of having a higher interest rate world. Like my grandparents, came up in a world where they could get a 15% APY on a CD,
Can we,
and houses cost $5,000. Would that be, a horrible, situation? No, it wouldn't be a horrible situation to live in. It would be horrible to get from here to there. That's what would be horrible. So
correct.
We have to
and
ask
that's
ourselves,
the difficult thing is whether you're pulling off a Band-Aid or you're using a saw, either way, we're going to have to inflict a massive amount of pain because of what's under that Band-Aid, right? So the difficult thing, I would rather pay a 17% interest rate on a $100,000 home, which is what it was in the 1980s. I would rather do that because there's an opportunity for me to pay it off, and even adjusted for inflation and everything.
Here's why it'll never happen, though. I can tell you why it's never going to happen. It'll never happen.
Talk to me.
Okay, because, and this is another reason why interest rates, the gravity is to pull interest rates lower, and why they will come lower. Wall Street does not want you to be able to make money easily. So those days where you could just stock money away in your savings account, buy a CD, earn enough interest to not have to take any risk and to just, be a saver. They don't want savers. And by
100%.
having interest rates down at zero, you have no choice. You must put your money to work. You must invest in stocks. You must invest in
real
index
estate.
funds, real estate. You've got to put it somewhere.
Correct.
You can't just sit on your money making zero.
Which is
and
terrifying for a lot of people on fixed incomes or that are working towards retirement. And not a lot of people can do that. A lot of people don't have the benefit of savings. But I agree with you so far. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that was really the point, is that Wall Street wants 0% interest rates. The government needs 0% interest rates. We will be trending in that direction. The idea of the old days, it's long, long gone. Wall Street controls too much of the government. The government is too much in debt. We will never see that day ever again.
If interest rates go above 10%, it'll be political suicide. It'll be it would be another one of those. Was it James Carwell or whatnot that said it's the economy, stupid, when in the early 1990s. But like, it's the economy, stupid. Like, people, if they can't afford to live, they can't afford to eat, they can't afford to fill up their gas tank, they can't afford to buy a house. Eventually you get to a point to where people don't want to talk about anything else. They're like, let's talk about the economy.
Yeah, it's exactly. And we have a situation on our hands where it's like, okay, well, the Fed is the only one who they're the only entity that can fix the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what should they do? Well, they should really be doing a lot less, and they should be using their ability to speak, and their words. Everything they say is taken with such great intensity in the financial markets. If they would just speak more and act less, they could harmonize things a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying, okay, well, here's our policy, and for the next year, we're going to do this. And it's like, all right, well, thank you for being transparent and telling us. But what you've done is you've made a clear path for where all of Wall Street and hedge funds guys can go and make their money, thereby ruining the financial markets and ruining all sorts of things. They don't care. They don't care.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to go where the easiest money to be made is. And so the Goldman Sachses will go out there and go, oh, bonds are unprotected, crush the bond market.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll make a fortune. And our investors will make a fortune, and everyone in the firm will make a fortune. And we don't care what the ripple effect is. We don't care if it crushes the real estate market. We don't care if it has if there's other consequences. We don't care. So if the Fed would speak more and take less action and be more neutral and say, well, if anything else over there goes wrong, we're going to step in and do something. Or if that gets any worse, we're going to be there to fix it. Instead of saying, well, we're now going to try, because what they're doing is an experiment right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically saying, we're going to just keep chugging an interest rate. That's what these red arrows are here. That's the Fed raising rates. It's the dollar getting stronger because of it. They say, oh, well, we're going to just keep, we're just going to keep raising rates, and we'll wait till the data tells us whether it's working or not. And good luck to you guys, all of you out there in the interim.
Yeah.
That's where we are right now. We're in the middle of their experiment. And it might work. It might not.
Sorry, go ahead, Derrick.
That's all right. It may work. It may not work. It could work a long time from now if they kept at it, but we may not be able to wait that long. Like, it shouldn't be that way. There should be a lot less action, a lot more talk that helps keep the markets in check, the market makers in check, the Goldman Sachs of the world, those people, so that they don't have a clear path to go and ruin markets and make tons of money. The Fed should always be there to protect the markets. It should be there to protect the stock market from absurd over short selling, should be there to protect the bond market from absurd over short selling, should be there to protect the housing market from ridiculous things happening in the bond market. Instead, they're not there to protect. They're laser focused on this thing, inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And to them, they believe that is the king that must be slayed. And I think they're missing the forest through the trees, David.
Well, I'll tell you what, we have a history in this country of repeating history. These antitrust laws, you look at, some of the laws that were undone, and it's what's very interesting about it is historically you'll see Democrats undo go after policy that only a Democrat could go after, and Republicans go after a policy that only a Republican could go after, and then you end up in a situation where the stock market crashes 9 years later. You know what I mean? And so it's just, we have no one at this point who's just looking out for regular people, because everything is about speculation at this point. If the market goes up, people make money. If the market goes down, people make money. And it's the people that understand all of this stuff that have assets. It's the asset class. And so you end up in a situation where, your average person is not going to be educated, and they're not going to have the savings, and they're not going to be in a situation to take advantage of a market when it does get pushed into recession. You put up a comment a moment ago about how most people don't save money. And I agree with her 100%, Janet. I agree with you 100%. The problem is that most people are not in a situation where they even can save money. There was a crazy statistic that was released a year ago about how 40% of people can't afford an unexpected $400 bill. And when you look at things like that, we're all spending a lot more than $400 on average than we were last year. So there's a lot of people, their savings are tapped. They're moving in with mom or dad. Their family's becoming multi-generational. People are so tapped right now that I do worry about the state of the economy if we continue to inflict pain. Because, one of the things that President Trump said was he talked about during COVID-19, not letting the cure be worse than, I can't remember exactly, the cure worse than the disease or whatnot, or the treatment worse than the disease. And I feel like in some ways that's what we're doing with the housing market. We're letting the treatment be worse than the disease. We're really going very aggressively after everyone in order to provide affordable housing. We're going to kick people out of their homes and make people lose their jobs. And so I'm just very worried about this narrative, because there's not enough people really addressing it from a common sense perspective of like, geez, no one's going to be able to afford a house if nobody can work. And if none of the companies that are around in 2 years are paying living wages, if it's just Walmart and Amazon, holy crap, what are we going to do?
Yeah, well, you're seeing the serious rise in entrepreneurship, particularly amongst younger folks, which is huge. That's what's really, really necessary, because you have to be an entrepreneur. You have to make a great living if you're going to live in this society that we've got. And I'm continually seeing it too. I work with a lot of people who are buying houses that work at Qualcomm and stuff like that. So seeing people work at big companies, get paid a lot of money. Companies that are making big money, technology companies. There's always certain winners, in every market. There's certain companies that are going to do well. These are people who are very well educated, extremely intelligent and talented individuals who are doing really well for themselves. And so there's opportunities out there, but what happens in these markets, as you're alluding to, is it's the lower wage earners who get screwed the most, because they're not shorting the bond market, because they're not privy to, well, what should I be doing with my cash? I've saved up $8,000. I have it under my mattress because I just want to know it's there. I worked so hard for it, and not taking these risks. And we've built a risk-based economy where, your reward is associated to your risk. And guess what? You're not going to always be right. So you're going to have to be able to take losses. A lot of people don't have the capacity to take the loss, or the mental, fortitude to take a loss. To be
100%. And that's not a mean thing to say. One of the things that I see a lot of people commenting on is, people should be saving. I think that we forget sometimes how fortunate we are, how blessed we are, that to not only be working in this industry, but to be relatively good at working in this industry. I'm very fortunate, just as you are, that God blessed me with a brain to be able to look at information and, put it into a way that's understandable for people. And I'm blessed that people come to me and when they want to buy and sell real estate. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of people in this industry that come a market shift, they're dead in the water. So a rising tide lifts all boats, but when the water goes out, you see you swimming naked. And there's a lot of people that are already being exposed for swimming naked. And unfortunately, I would like for there to be enough liquidity and enough assets and enough, education out there for everybody to win. But that's not realistic in a market that's constantly driven by speculation. And we include water in that. We include housing in that. We include medicine in that. And so it's become a very dangerous world to just live in, and a very expensive world to just live in, because of the fact that people are more loyal to their CEOs, to their stockholders, right? The CEO is more loyal to the stockholder than he is his employee. And
To the
then,
customer, yeah.
you know, which is that's their fiduciary duty, right? But then you've also got, you know, it's just everyone's fiduciary duty is just all screwed up. I feel like these days you got, you know, people that are working in medicine that aren't dedicated to improving the medicine. They're dedicated to making sure that people are buying it, and this affects everything. And so I'm just, you know, I'm
There's a certain honor that is missing that
Yeah.
used to once be here. And you can see it in some old movies, and you can see it in some old interactions that have been captured on YouTube, where there is a certain honor in doing what you do that people would take in what they're doing. But you're right. So if you're the CEO of a company, who are you answering to? You're answering to a board, you're answering to shareholders, you have employees to cater to, and you also have customers to cater to. So who gets your attention? Can you divide it evenly? Or does it really just fall on the shareholders and the board, and you're really not too worried about employees or customers? And that's why I think we're going to see, I think the revolution that is on its way, David, is one of mom and pop coming back, you know, and this is where the digital economy can come in and allow people to compete. For example, me as a loan guy, you know, I compete against the biggest loan companies in the country, and I can smoke them. Why is that? Well, because I don't have the big expenses that they have. I don't have
100%.
the advertising, you know. So there's ways, and I think you're going to see more and more of that happen. The more we stay connected and the more digital the economy becomes, you'll have more and more mom and pops where people will be able to create their own businesses, where entrepreneurship is so important, teaching your kids and bringing them up with this understanding of how things work, because that's where the revolution is going to happen, is we have to break away from the corporatization of our experience
100%.
in this country.
You know, we saw all these antitrust laws that stopped being enforced, and then what you saw was these massive monopolies going out and putting other people out of business and draining local economies of their value, of their worth, of their resources. And I think that it is a revolution of not just the mom and pop, but the locality, right? So this Saturday, we're bringing back the French Valley Merchant Market. It's the first one. JP Wright headed it back up, and it's because, and we're inviting local farmers. We're going to have produce this time. This time we're doing it. They did all the permits and everything. And because I agree with you, I think that the counterculture movement is going to be back towards the mom and pop. It's going to be away from the Walmarts, the Amazons, et cetera, and so forth. But I can tell you, if we're going to continue moving forward with Walmart and with Amazon, and we're going to continue to let them drain our communities of their money, of their hours, then we should hold them accountable. I would love to see a little bit more of a unionization drive in some of these larger companies, you know, the Amazons and the Walmarts, like I said, because unfortunately in my area, two people that work at an Amazon warehouse that are married to each other couldn't afford to buy a house. So what does that say? Is that the kind of thing that, you know, if two people are making $36,000 a year and they're wanting to buy a house, but where your average person needs to make $79,000 a year, you know, they're going to have to either go way out, they're going to have to downgrade, they're going to have to get into a mobile, they're going to have to do something like that in order to buy a home, when that's not what two people that are putting in 40 hours a week at a warehouse deserve.
100% correct. And, you know, I can't believe we've hit the 1 hour mark here already. Can you believe it?
Did we really?
Is that crazy or what?
Wow.
So I want to, here's my final thought, and then I'll let you have yours. So I'll give you a chance to think about it. Final thought is this. Look, there's a lot of things going on. You see me pull lots of charts up. If you follow this channel, you know, I'm always looking at these charts and maybe confusing. Hey, what the hell is he talking about? He's talking about Fibonacci levels and all that. Take all this and you can flush it down the toilet. Doesn't matter. At the end of the day, here's the one thing everybody needs to do. And this is why I'm such a big advocate for home ownership. Figure out how to buy a home as your priority, you know, financial goal. How can I buy a home? If you don't know, if you can't get one now, or someone told you couldn't, how can I get on the path to do that? And make that your focus. Make that your focus for your financial future, is to own a home free and clear one day. That means, you know, buying a home today, paying it off, you know, making the payments, trying to get it actually paid off. That being your financial. If you can do that, you can get on that path and you can accomplish that, then you're going to be okay, because it's the housing costs that that could and have been over time getting out of control. And so if you can do that for yourselves, the one thing you're going to need is a place to live. It could be something that's not just huge for you, but could be huge for your entire family one day. The way that things go down in the future, David, also we could see a lot more families doing it you discussed earlier, which is staying on the same plot of land. I look at my wife and her grandpa. Well, her uncle and her dad, they live on his land. They built houses on his land that he already had there. And they were able to do it very inexpensively, and it's a super efficient situation and live in a beautiful place. We may see in the future where that becomes the best way to live, the best way for your kids, your grandkids to have a nice home to live in might be that way. This is not a doomsday thing. I'm trying to be very real with you here. And so make it your focus to figure out what it's going to take to buy and own ultimately a piece of real estate. And you can forget about all this stuff, stocks and, bonds and currencies, and don't worry about that. Work hard and try to own a home. And that's the main goal I think everyone should be focused on. Your final thoughts, David?
I'd buy homes. I would buy homes, plural. Before I would pay one off, I would have a couple. I'd leverage the debt. I would, as long as you are cash in the green monthly to where you have somebody paying off your home, then, turn around and get another one. And so, because the thing is like, our home price is going to continue to go like this over the course of the next 30 years, probably. And so I do think it's a huge, wise investment. There's a lot of things coming with SB9 that I think people should look into and be aware of. And then finally, I would strongly encourage people to go back and look at the video that I put out last week. I don't put out a lot of content like you do, but I did put out one video that jumped into new housing, specifically what's happening with Lennar, what's going on with Zillow on the pre-foreclosures and foreclosures, and what's coming soon. And then also existing inventory, and also how to read all of that stuff in your market. Because one of the things that we need to do is we need to take in the content, be the consumer, but then also create some content, be the creator, because then people are going to start coming to you and looking for information for you to be the local licensed real estate expert in your area.
Love it, my man. Yes. And I will include a link to that video that you made in the description below. Mr. David Serpa, thank you so much, brother, for your time. It's always great to chat with you. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll continue to make you smarter than everyone else. Subscribe, watch the video in the link below, in the description below. There will be a link there amongst all the resources we shared today. Take care, everybody. Have a great night.